Okay, I'm getting more and more subscribers to my YouTube page, which is awesome. So I know that a number of you probably have no idea what what is this really going on in the background when I'm doing work on the car. You know, you see cars chirping around and like, what's the deal? So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on it. If you already know this, you can skip ahead in the video or whatever. Maybe you'll learn something new. Okay. Quick background on me is the family business was a fabrication shop. We made trailers and truck decks and that kind of thing. And I was never allowed to touch the welding equipment. That did not prevent me from touching the welding equipment after hours, but I never could let my dad know about it because I was expressly forbidden from touching any of the equipment. My job, though, was bolting the decks on the trailers and stuff. So that's my experience, is just drilling wood decking onto trailers and truck decks and cleaning up the frames of the trailers before they got painted. That's about the extent of what I was allowed. But it was still a fabrication business. I still did learn some stuff about cutting and welding and that kind of stuff. But anyways, that was all stick welding, so it really didn't help me much with my substandard TIG welding. But anyway, okay, so that happened. Then my dad died in 2001, and I was in no place to take over the family business, so we sold off the assets, and I was a long-haul truck driver. I became a long-haul truck driver, and what I specialized in hauling oversized stuff, like, you know, like the excavators and that kind of thing. I loved hauling the oversized stuff. So I did that for 10 years. Now, when you haul oversized equipment, you are often have downtime because in many states the oversized stuff can't travel at night or on weekends. So sun goes down, I have to pull over. What I discovered during one of these many downtime periods was indoor kart racing. I was in Edmonton, Alberta. I was not allowed to travel anymore for the day or for the weekend, and I went to West Edmonton Mall and discovered indoor karting, and I was completely hooked. So after that, every time that I was in another city somewhere in Canada or the US, I would look up to see if there was an indoor kart track that I could go check out. And almost every major city had an indoor kart track. So I got to ride kart tracks everywhere, all over the place. And so what I did was, I thought, well, Winnipeg, my hometown, definitely needs something like this. So I started putting together the pieces to make that happen. So the first thing I did was I bought a cart. Well, I did some research. Like when I would go to a kart track someplace, I would find out what they were using for their kart frames and stuff. And I did a lot of research that way. And I learned the things that I liked and didn't like about various kart tracks. You know, my biggest complaint was when you had massive differences in kart performance one to the next. And I hated when you got into a poorly maintained kart and you knew it was a poorly maintained kart. That was always something that I watched for. Anyways, so the first thing I did was actually buy a cart. I bought one single cart. Oh, I can show you that thing. I can show you that cart. I still have it. I bought this cart in, I think, 2001. I bought it from a company called SH Karting out of Quebec. And what I did was I used this cart and I put together a whole business plan and everything for investors because I clearly didn't have enough money to start a kart track on my own. And yeah, so this is it. This is the very first kart frame that I ever bought, and it has been broken and welded up so many times. It is so bent and beat up, but for sentimental reasons, I had to keep it. So anyways, all right, so after showing investors the cart, and what I would do is I would set up a little racetrack in a parking lot with pylons and stuff, and I would invite potential investors out to try it out. And I just had the one cart. And actually the company that made these carts The biggest engine they put in them was a 6.5 horsepower engine, and I had targets for how quickly I wanted them to accelerate. I wanted them to do 50 kilometers an hour inside a building. Now that's 32 miles per hour for my American friends. And in order to do that, they had to get up to 50 kilometers an hour from a standstill in about 150 feet. And well, that clearly was not going to happen with a 6.5 horsepower motor. It took about 300 and some feet for a 6.5 horsepower to get up to speed. So I convinced the company that built my cart to put a 9 horsepower in it. That was the biggest engine that they could that came with a transmission, this 2-speed 2-to-1 reduction transmission that I wanted. So they put a 9 in there, and it was better, but it was still like 200 and some feet to get up to 50 kilometers an hour. But I bought the cart anyways, and I was showing it to investors. And actually, on my first date with my now wife, Bridget, I took her out ripping around a Walmart parking lot with this cart until security came and kicked us out. Anyways, yeah, so that was our very first date, and it was exciting. Anyways, when she really enjoyed ripping that cart around the lot, I knew I was onto something good with her. Anyways, so fast forward, I managed to raise enough money through investors to start Speed World. And so it's Speed World Indoor Kart Track, for those of you who don't know. And so we officially opened in 2004, and it was a struggle. I mean, first thing was, I don't know how much detail that you all want, but this city that I'm in is not business friendly. There were so many roadblocks put up in the way. Like, just a simple thing, like, as an example, gasoline that is not used for highway use is not taxed, like for farmers and that kind of stuff. So you get fuel quite a bit cheaper. Well, the city I live in has specifically written into the bylaws that kart tracks are exempted from that rule, which means that I have to pay the same road taxes as everybody else, even though my carts don't operate on the highway. And I have to pay a lot extra for my fuel. Another example of roadblocks is when I bought this place. This is a 27,500 square foot building, all right? So the city considered us an amusement facility, and in the bylaws it says that you have to have one parking stall, like car parking stall, for every 100 square feet of building space, which means that I had to have parking for 275 cars, even though my occupancy permit is for 50 people. So it's ridiculous, right? You'd think just putting up a, you think that somebody down there at City Hall could just go, oh, well, that's ridiculous. We'll just, your occupancies are 50, no problem. Nope. We had to put up a variance, and when we put up a variance, that basically invited everybody from the neighborhood to complain about us or bring up concerns about us. Now, the property I'm on is zoned light industrial. So when you're zoned light industrial, you're allowed to make as much noise as you want until 11 o'clock at night. Okay, so I have this variance up at the corners of my property about this parking stall thing, and when we show up at the city council meeting for what we thought would be just a rubber stamp for our kart track license, what we got was a guy who lives just up the street showing up at this meeting and claiming that he has concerns about the carts racing around, and that he thinks that this is going to be bad for the neighborhood, and it's going to be noisy and all this kind of stuff. Now, of course, I said to the councilors, the city councilors, we're an indoor kart track. The carts will never be outside. They'll never be racing outside. It's all indoors, and nothing to worry about. And also that We are zoned industrial, so we are technically allowed to make noise until 11 o'clock at night. Well, that mattered for nothing. They denied our permanent cart track license, and they only gave us a temporary cart track license. And here's the crazy thing. They limited our hours of operation from 4 p.m. to 12 midnight. Well, that's just crazy, because, I mean, we had to accept that because that was the only way that we could even open. So we're like, okay, but we did appeal it, and we opened our doors in officially October of 2004. And so we opened our doors. We were popular right from the get-go. People were coming in here right away, but we appealed the decision, and then in, I think, January or February of the following year, we had another meeting with the city councilors, and the same dickhead from up the street shows up, and now he's claiming that our carts were racing around the parking lot in the streets in the neighborhood. Well, anybody who knows about carts knows that slick tires and an inch of ground clearance doesn't work very well in snow, which is what we had at that time because it was January. Anyways, so I'm gonna make a long story short for that part of it. We did eventually get our permanent cart track license, but for a year and a half, we could not open during the day. We could not have corporate stuff during the day. It was completely ridiculous, and it's amazing that we survived. Anyways, so now we can open 24 hours a day if we feel like it. That's cool. We used to be open till midnight every day, but we discovered that during the week, if you have somebody showing up at 11:30 at night to race carts, they are drunk, almost always. So now we close a little earlier during the week. We close at 10:30 during the week instead of midnight. But anyways, okay. So after a few years of really hustling and getting the cart track off the ground and struggling with all that goes along with that, during the day I would have time to work on the Pink Panther. So I started building the car, and you guys all know the rest. Originally it had a V12 and an all steel body, and it was a GT, the hardtop version of the MG. But now that was version 1.0. I've now gone over all this, and this car I call version 4.4. So I'm going to make a separate video about all the different versions, and I'll have video of all the different versions of the car. But if you're a latecomer to this YouTube page, this car has changed a lot. Yeah, it used to be, V12 and all steel, and it was white, and it was cool. It sounded awesome, but it was not very fast. But anyways, okay. I see now that, 13 minutes talking about this. I may need to make this a whole separate video or edit this down. But anyways, okay, so that's the story of how Speed World started, and well, here we are now.